Hey, is that Kyle?
This is Kyle. How are you?
I'm good, good.
Well, it's nice to talk to you. I'm really an honor to talk to you, actually.
Oh, thank you very much. Nice to talk to you too.
Yeah, you've got a beautiful new record. I mean, beautiful new record.
Thank you. Thank you
So,
very much. Glad
yeah.
you like it.
Let's see here. I think before I start with the album, though, what you did a reissue a couple years ago, right? And it ended up in the top 30 on Billboard.
Yeah, it was a reissue of a record we made in the late '90s on a four-track, which is something that was kind of the lowest of the lo-fi type of recorders, and we did it because we couldn't find any other way to, and no one wanted to give us any money to record on anything better, and we in our 20s we really wanted to be in the charts, but we got there when we were in our 40s, which it was interesting, you know.
It's that is so interesting. I mean, you try and you try and you try, and then you just do a little reissue, and there it is.
Yeah, and so you're in the charts, and you're too old to go on tour, and you're married and everything, and so the gods are cruel is my motto.
Most bands, they actually have to go away for at least a decade before that sort of attention starts pulling at them and everything. But for you, it was only what, like 3 years or something like that.
The minute that we stopped promoting our material in any way, the minute that we stopped doing interviews or playing live or anything, that's when we started to sell records, which is really hard not to take personally.
It's when we stop trying. It's always what happens when we stop trying.
There's some kind of Buddhist thing in there, isn't there? But yeah, but it's still rather insulting. The minute we stop trying to explain what we're doing, that's when people got interested.
It's sort of like that dating game that some people play, the hard to get sort of or thing. Like, I'm not going to give you all my attention right now because you'll want me more. So if you say, listen, we're going on an indefinite hiatus, everybody's like, no, even if they weren't paying attention before.
Yeah, but we meant it. It's more like having a stalker, who keeps coming to your house when you're just trying to get on with your life.
I'm glad it worked out either way. It's
Yeah, me too, eventually, yeah.
And then I guess this album. So you go on the hiatus. You do a couple albums with Amor de Diaz, which is your family band, right?
Well, I mean, that was a band with a very talented lady that I met as a musician who I ended up later on being in a relationship with. But I loved her old band, which was called Pipas, because they took some real interesting Latin Brazilian rhythms, bossa nova rhythms, which was not what the Clientele were about at all. And I thought, yeah, I want to do that kind of thing a little bit more, like those beautiful jazzy bossa nova chords and rhythms, and kind of make music that people could actually dance to.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had a couple of years of doing that. We made 2 records, which was a huge amount of fun.
I guess I bring it up like that when I say family band, because to me it's like when you're and I'll call it working, when you're working with someone that you're also involved with, it's almost like it never turns off. And I'd sort of wondered if, putting the Clientele back, in focus allows you some separation now between your personal life and your professional life.
Well, it does, I suppose. I mean, it's certainly easier to tell people in the Clientele I don't like what they're doing, So I have that distance, which is welcome.
Yeah. And so for this record, I hear that it all starts with it all starts with strings.
The way that the album actually took shape was that I met an old friend of mine on the street who I hadn't seen in 20 years. We used to play kind of Birds covers and music together when we were younger. But we were both too bossy and too kind of egotistical as 19-year-olds to really work together. And as sadder and wiser men, we met on the street and compared our lack of success with each other. And he told me that there's a guy called Anthony Harmer. He told me that he played the santur now, which is a kind of an Iranian dulcimer. And I was really intrigued by that. I said, well, let's see if I can play guitar along with you and see what happens. And suddenly there was a new Clientele record. So that's kind of how it came about, really.
Yeah. So when did the songs start coming from you? Had you been working on some songs already? I mean, with any plan to do with them?
I had absolutely nothing when I met him. I mean, I had like half an idea, but because it suddenly felt like working with him was unlocking areas that I'd never been able to reach before, I suddenly began to write again. I hadn't written for a good couple of years, and all of a sudden I was writing song after song after song. So it just kind of happened in a kind of an avalanche.
And there they come, and boy, are they beautiful. I mean, I think I heard Everyone You Meet before Lunar Days, even though that one had been put out first. When I listened to Everyone You Meet, And unless I'm getting it wrong too, it sounds so optimistic. I mean, there's that line about everyone, bringing love, and I thought you might be one of the only people that's optimistic in a time that I'm not hearing that word from a lot of artists out there.
Well, the Clientele has always been about a kind of synthesis of opposites. So if we have a pretty tune, we usually have absolutely horrible, despairing lyrics on top of it, and you have to kind of listen in. But I think that I am personally optimistic about this time because, I mean, not to be a bore about it, because I think it's quite easy to become a bore about it, but I feel like the revolution is always followed by a counter-revolution, and the counter-revolution is going to be ours, not theirs. Mm-hmm. So I think that the sane people and the people who believe in tolerance and fraternity and liberty will be the ones who have the final say, despite the fact that things do look quite bad at the moment around the world.
Yeah, well, that's where I pick up on the title of your album right there. That's what I'm hopeful of anyway, is that music for the age of miracles, and especially for that last part of it, the age of miracles. I mean, do you see those are on the way? Is that what you're talking about at all right there?
Well, I think there's an amount of ambiguity in the title, really, and people can make of it whatever they want. I suppose for me, it was a reflection of the fact that there's this outbreak of kind of magical thinking in my country and in yours. This kind of, if we just don't step on the cracks in the pavement, things will go back to how they were in some kind of imagined past. And a huge outbreak of irrationality, which is really interesting in a way. The surrealists would have loved it. They would have loved to live through this time and see the kind of monstrous ways that truth is being disfigured and the irrationality is breaking into life in an almost medieval way. But so that it does refer to that, but I think there is also the other side that you talk about, that's maybe things aren't quite so bad as they seem. Maybe there is a new age on the way. It does seem like what everybody agrees on, no matter what their politics are, is that things can't go on as they are. Right. So it's interesting that things are changing now after so long, where they seem to stay the same from about 1992 till 2016, and it just got a bit boring. So it's interesting that things are changing.
I was reading on NPR a minute ago. I know they got the album stream up there, and they kind of made point that there's quite a bit of mythology on this record.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Greek mythology, with its kind of irrationality and monstrousness, the figure of the Minotaur, or the kind of the Greek gods who have no real, there's no explaining why they behave like they do. There's no pattern to their behavior. I feel that reflects our time so much more vividly than any kind of the later religions. So I've added a lot of that kind of stuff into the lyrics because it just seems to me a really, really good symbol of where we are as a society.
And I got to tell you, the compliments again, this is what makes being a fan of the Clientele so much fun, is finding all of these layers that go along with your music. And I mean, I can't stop giving the compliments because it's such a great record. And I'm so happy that you guys are doing it again. Assuming you're doing it again, I don't know. Are you looking towards the future? Is this just this is what we're doing right now?
Well, I was talking to James, the bass player, on the way to the rehearsal earlier on, and I was saying, I just want to go down the pub with my old friends. I can't be bothered with this playing guitar business anymore, but that's just me being a miserable old, so-and-so. So hopefully there'll be other things. I feel like with this record, we made a record that works as an album. Before the Clientele were always about 7-inch singles. It was like one side, the other side, the packaging. That's how we work best as a band. And I feel we've kind of cracked the album format with this record. We've unlocked lots of other kind of layers of sound that we've always been interested in doing, but never really managed to do. So I feel there is a future for the band. What it is, I'm not really sure. It kind of depends how lazy we are, I think.
Well, I know in an interview a couple of years ago, you had mentioned that, it's an art project. I think it's what you called it. And I know a lot of people kind of picked up on that. You said it's an art project that you're rumbling on since the 90s. But it would seem to me that really takes the weight off of it when you think of it like that. Like, this could be just for now, because we have this immaculate album concept or whatever, or I guess it could be anything, right?
Well, I guess so. I mean, I think what I was saying then, the guy who was talking to me was saying, your records, they change only incrementally. They don't change in a kind of dynamic way, in the way that Radiohead's records, like between one record and another, they'll be completely different. And so I was probably being a little bit defensive. I think that with the Clientele, we made our first record, we made Suburban Light, and we kind of thought we had that maxim: to know us is to love us. All you had to do was hear us, and you would buy our records. And it didn't happen that way, like we ended up splitting opinion a lot. Like not everybody loved what we did, not everybody could understand what we were doing. So then we made another record, to kind of say, you didn't get that one, but here's a bit more of the same. Maybe you just weren't listening, and I think that we kind of carried on in that way, just like drafting the same record to perfect the original idea we'd had. And I feel with this record we've actually moved forward and changed. And that's a big deal for me. So, yeah, I think it'd be easy to criticize me for saying that it was an art project rather than a band, because obviously it is a band. What I'm really trying to say is that I just don't want to have that kind of expectation, that Miles Davis, Picasso type expectation of do something completely different and then something completely different again and then something completely different again. So we're not that kind of band.
Well, you don't have to be defensive towards me because you call it whatever you want to call it. As long as you're putting out music, I'm going to be there listening. So,
oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, it was really a pleasure talking to you, and congratulations on the release and the upcoming show and the rehearsals and everything else, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, pleasure talking to you too.
All right, we'll see you around.
Okay, take care then. Bye-bye.
Right, bye.
Bye.